Hello team and welcome back to another Line War cast. This is your map today. There's some trade routes in the bottom, a little bit of a split map scenario because although this northern part of the map is connected on the left hand side, it is not on the right hand side. Our two players in blue, Valthor, and in red, Plant Block. Valthor's going to spawn in the middle here, likely going to see Plant Block spawn in the bottom left or to the right of where Valthor is going. And Plant Block is in the bottom left. So both players relatively close to each other, but neither will be able to see the other one in the fog of war to start this game. And Plant Block did not take this water territory for a quick refinery. And there's no other real refinery on land for red. Valthor did pick this one water territory to be able to build a refinery on this energy well. And Valthor's opening up town, dock, and airport with the pre-construction money, building helicopters out of the airport and a missile boat out of the dock with a quick barracks as a follow-up. And 3 factory, 2 barracks, and 2 industry for Plant Block. So Plant Block definitely going to have the unit advantage and more factory units to start this game. Valthor could have the money to put down a factory, and that's exactly what happens. Because at this point, Valthor sees that Plant Block has spawned very close, and vice versa. Plant Block sees Valthor capping this territory. And this could be a very strong push from Plant Block. With 3 artillery pieces already done, 3 SAMs on the way, which is a great blind counter to this airport with helicopters from blue. Valthor's putting down another factory because this looks like a relatively serious push. And luckily for Valthor, luckily and unluckily, it's 3 SAMs as a follow-up, but at least it's not tanks. If Plant Block had some tanks pooling up here, the rush distance from this forest edge to the airport is very, very short. We can see already that Valthor's going to start digging in on the airport, realizing that this could become a sketchy situation. The good thing for blue is that there was a town that was built, so Valthor's economy likely going to be a little bit better than Plant Block, since Plant Block only has these 2 industries. 3 SAMs are going to show up pretty much in time for this one helicopter. Certainly will be out by the time the second helicopter shows up. And after the first 3 SAMs, a transition back into artillery pieces for red. 3 SAMs is enough to deal with 2 helicopters. Past that, they'll likely need to build more SAMs. Red clearly with the infantry advantage. Valthor just pushing ahead, buying some more time to mount this defense and allow these 2 factories to start producing units. And blue stopped building things out of the dock. The boats are nice, but if the land battle is lost, as we've seen so many times in games of Line War, it sometimes does not matter. If a player has naval control, it doesn't secure the win for them. 3 artillery pieces now in the fight for red. Valthor backs up. Perfect timing, really. Instead of engaging these artillery pieces. And it'll be difficult for blue's helicopters to get much done when there's 3 SAMs here. There's going to be more SAMs on the way, a 4th one being built. And here's the first refinery for Valthor, who continues to have 2 squads that are capping to the east of the map. Blue's infantry count is thinning out a little bit here. These blue infantry have the bonus because they're in the forest when they take this fight. And the first 2 artillery pieces are now done for blue. Valthor's going to probably move these helicopters, might even move them to the right hand or to the left hand side. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of territories that is capped, so it's not like Valthor can transition these helicopters over here or something and start launching attacks on Plant Block's base. And it's tough to say. If red just attack moved everything at this defensive line before these artillery pieces got in, there's a chance that Plant Block could win the game here. But it would be a close call either way. So at the moment, red kind of taking a conservative approach at this point, which will allow Valthor to get some more units. There's a SAM and a tank on the way for blue. The SAMs won't do much since there is no airport, but there's no possible way that Valthor would know that. And here's the attempt of these helicopters to jump on top of these SAMs. So I said that 3 SAMs would be able to take on 2 helicopters. And thankfully I'm right. For my own casting's sake, thankfully I'm right. So it resets the helicopter count for blue. Still a large amount of artillery for plant block. It's not necessarily like a little bit of a timer that is going on for red here, but this tank and however many tanks Valthor can build could come in huge here. Tanks being great at picking off units on the side. Or even just running by this army. 3rd factory now for Valthor though. The push is still very scary. Plant block is going for a town of their own, which is a great call. We can check the economy. 435 for blue and 426 for red. And here comes the push. It's 4 artillery pieces and a tank against however many artillery pieces this is for red. There's enough SAMs at this point that plant block's kind of guaranteed that they're going to be able to defend whatever helicopters show up. These artillery pieces in the defensive line are going to be big with that defensive bonus, and they also get a range bonus in the defensive line. Defender's advantage for sure for blue. But is there enough artillery for plant block to just be able to push through this? Certainly all the artillery is going to die for Valthor. And the dock is being self-destructed at this point to get some more money for blue to spend. Defensive line is disbanded. 3rd factory is now up and running for Valthor, creating tanks. But a very precarious part of me situation in this game. Valthor's this far on the right-hand side of the map. No real capping for plant block on the left side beside these 3 infantry in the mountains. There is another barracks for plant block in the east, though, which will likely start capping. Very creative dig-in from these artillery pieces, using this factory a little bit as cover. But it is a huge amount of artillery. For red, there's almost an argument to use a move command almost on these artillery pieces so that these ones in the back don't keep getting bunched up. This farm piece on, like, this farm site is really kind of derping out these artillery pieces. 3 SAMs for plant block though, great micro to destroy that airport. So 1 helicopter for Valthor gets out. And it's 2 tanks for Valthor, which wouldn't be able to take on this army head on. Valthor's going to build 2 factories in the back to start defending this town. And there's a large chance that blue is going to lose both of these factories that are up front. We'll see what 3 tanks can do. They're now on top of their artillery pieces. Get 1 of them. We'll get 2 for sure. But all of red's artillery is opened up at this point against the tanks, except for these 2 in the back, I guess, that need to move forward. And the tanks will buy a lot of time, if nothing else, for Valthor to set up these 2 factories close to the town. This barracks is somehow still alive for blue. And commandos to the northwest. We can check the eco. 501 for red, 505 for blue, so still very close. Valthor is capping on the right-hand side at a higher rate than plant block is capping, starting to cap now to the west. And a very strong push from red here. Probably a 3rd factory for Valthor by the town, and that's exactly what it is. There is a choke here for Valthor, which may or may not benefit them because the artillery blob for red is still quite large. Valthor's evacuating these 2 artillery pieces to a little bit of a safer location, now opens them up to buy some more time. And it's all just tanks now for blue, who has secured this refinery. If there's red artillery pieces along this coast, Plant Block might be able to just destroy this refinery. It is in view, but at the same time, it's not like red wants to divert a bunch of these artillery pieces to go kill that refinery, since they're so useful in this frontline fight. An attempt from these blue tanks to take out a SAM. There's still 5 left, 6 in fact, with the 7th reinforcing, and 3 more SAMs on the way. And another barracks for Plant Block to start capping. Valthor isn't quite dug in at this point. These artillery pieces are sort of working on it at this point, and it's going to come down to whether Valthor can hold off this red army with 3 factories all going tanks. And a 4th factory for Valthor. Every minute that goes by that red isn't pushing here, I think is better for Valthor over time, who's going to build up a lot of tanks. There's no more airport for blue, so it's a great number of SAMs for Plant Block to have here. And a dock now for red in this southern sea. It will be interesting to see what type of boat Plant Block decides to build. And here comes the push with this infantry and artillery line in the back. So all the artillery moves forward with a move command to get them all in range, and now they open up. It's 4 tanks with 5 and 6 on the way. 2 tanks on the side trying to open up a new front, or at the very least kind of mess with these reinforcements for red. And this is a huge moment in the game. How successful can these 4 tanks be against this many artillery pieces and SAM units? The town will likely go down for Valthor. And luckily for Plant Block, it's actually 2 SAMs on the way out of half of these factories for Valthor. And every SAM that's created is 1 less artillery piece that blue is making. Tanks are having a decent amount of success here. You can see just how successful they've been at holding up all these reinforcement units who are not close to the front line. And we gotta quickly check any more development. Valthor's making a factory here and an industry. And Plant Block's starting to cap on the left-hand side, and it's got a bunch of infantry that'll speed up that process. Income-wise, 571 for red, 540 for blue. There's now 3 tanks in this fight. There's about to be 3 more that are created. And slowly over time, I think Valthor is going to be able to push this back and maybe lose just 1 factory. The tanks for blue have been cleaned up at this point, so Plant Block gets to reinforce this fight again without having to stop to destroy pesky tanks. And this is the power of tanks against unguarded artillery units. It's now just 8 SAMs and an artillery piece at the front line for Plant Block. And there's about to be 4 tanks that all complete around the same time for blue. And with 5 tanks, they would be able to destroy all these SAMs. Another barracks on the left for Valthor to start capping and contesting what Plant Block's doing on the west of the map. SAMs get 1 tank. That was the damage tank, so it kind of makes sense. But now with 7 SAMs left against 2 SAMs and 2 tanks, even if Plant Block gets this factory, most of these SAMs are going to die. Luckily for Plant Block, losing these SAMs doesn't matter a ton since Valthor hasn't remade that airport. But it is another factory going tanks. In the bottom right of the screen. Red intercepts this one tank in the mountain. It should be able to get taken out. The great body block from these infantry. And Valthor's just sending these tanks forward, which will give the 4 factories kind of room to breathe here. 594 income for blue, 641 for red at this point. Valthor's putting down another barracks. It's transport boats and a missile boat out of this bottom dock for Plant Block, who's potentially going to be able to start ferrying units across to this part of the map. In the bottom right. But very slowly Valthor builds up the tank count. There's 4 now fighting, taking out all these SAMs. It's a transition into artillery pieces out of the blue factories. And Valthor has the factory numbers advantage at least. There's 5 blue factories, 3 red factories. Plant Block now starting to get this first refinery. So potential for a tank switch from red. And starting to get some skirmishes on the west side of the map. It's commandos for blue, so this is Plant Block's vision. They'll be kind of hard to see. We'll see if red can group up those infantry to keep the vision. Because otherwise those commandos are going to get very tricky to take out with their stealth properties. 1 missile boat in the north for Valthor continues the cap. And these 2 tanks trying their best to fight these red infantry. Airport is now on the way for Plant Block. The helicopter on the left-hand side is big for Valthor. It'll be able to support all these commandos in the west. And slowly Valthor's building up an army to fight in this open field. 2nd airport now for Plant Block. And now with this low number of infantry on the left-hand side, the commandos are super stealth for blue. 711 for Plant Block, 624 for Valthor on the Ego. And a very even game. Valthor is going for more economy, so blue's eco output is going to start catching up, pardon me, to Plant Block, especially if Valthor wins on the left-hand side here and is able to cap a lot of this territory that red has taken. There's even commandos in part of this army, just like SAMs, tanks, and commandos on the right-hand side for Valthor that's going to be able to link up with this main army. Certainly blue has the tank advantage at the moment. And with enough numbers, the tanks will be able to bust through this. And it'll be interesting to see what Plant Block decides to make out of this airport. So it is a helicopter out of the first one. The port is on the way for red. This territory is capped. That's the other end of this trade route. It'll be difficult for red to take control of these 2 territories, especially this one, given how close this factory is. But the good thing for red is that blue still doesn't have any airports. A little bit of a tense moment here in the middle of the map. Red is moving forward. Valthor's going to have to back up. These 4 tanks have an opportunity to get around this army as it moves out of this choke. And that beep beep is a low energy noise for blue, but we heard another refinery go down somewhere. Or that's what I thought we heard. I guess not. Tanks attacking from both sides for Valthor here. Quite the fight. These blue artillery pieces are exposed, so this red infantry is going to trade great against these pieces at the front lines. And this destroys the majority of Valthor's tanks. And there's still quite a large red army here. Blue has a lot of success on the left-hand side of the map, though, which is important to note. And artillery tanks still out of these blue factories. Yeah, so it was a second refinery, and it's in the water here, which is a super safe refinery for Valthor to take. Interceptors out of this airport, so it's interceptor helicopter from Red, which will be a tremendous benefit when trying to take back this left-hand side of the map, which is super, super important. And will become more important as the game goes on. The big advantage that Blue still has is the number of tanks that there are on the field for them. Fifth factory by all these, I mean the other four factories, this like main base, so to speak, for Valthor at this point. There are 5 SAMs for Blue, relatively close to the refinery. The helicopters for Red are going to the left-hand side to help out against these commandos. There's also a possibility for them to come back home and try to attack this refinery directly. Although both destroying Valthor's gas and then also destroying these commandos and capping back the left-hand side probably, if not equal, like of strategic value, equal strategic value, but they're both great options to make. Great options to have. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Red could take out this refinery or spend using all the helicopters on the left-hand side. Both are great. There's a factory on the left-hand side now for Valthor, which will likely make SAMs in the situation that Blue is in. The tanks are slowly trying to get around this army. And the benefit, of course, to tanks, not only in their strength and in straight up fights against units, but it's really in a situation where your opponent's going for an artillery blob or more of like a heavy artillery style, is the speed of the tanks. So every time that Red moves these artillery pieces, it takes forever when you compare it to the tanks. So it really allows Valthor to constantly threaten that these tanks are just going to run by this army. It's difficult for Plant Block to want to just push into this as is. It's also not super helpful for Red that this is all in a defensive line at this point. And it's a lot of artillery. It would be difficult for Plant Block to break through this at this point. A cruiser and a missile boat for Red here, who's starting to get these infantry across. Or they're loaded up in the boats. We'll see where Plant Block decides to send them. Here come the tanks. Plant Block's caught some of these artillery pieces not fully deployed, but it is still a lot, and it is a ton of tanks for Valthor on this left-hand side of the fight. And these tanks are going to chew through this army very quickly. And this is a huge emphatic defense for Blue. Valthor probably has the opportunity to start counter-pushing once this is over. 866 income for Blue, 809 for Red. Then here's that link up with some of these commandos and tanks pouring through this mountain for Valthor, who adds another factory here. This is very cool. An escort of these 2 transport boats with 2 missile boats and a cruiser. And on the left-hand side, Plant Block's making some good progress. A missile boat is a little bit out of range to deal with these helicopters, and it is SAMs out of this factory. There's a good interceptor count now for Red on those airports. So whatever helicopters are over here for blue will be able to get dealt with. The interceptors will also do a great job to start revealing those commandos on the left-hand side and detecting them. More industry for blue. And great landing. Great play from Plant Block here. At the perfect location, it's now 6 infantry on land, taking on 1 SAM. And these red infantry will at least be able to destroy one of these factories. Especially since these boats can kind of help out, or at least be close enough to the shore, they might be able to get some shots off on those blue commandos. The SAMs are at the front line fighting. If these 4 SAMs died, then there's a chance that Plant Block has enough helicopters to be able to help out on this main fight. And we kind of got to go wide view to see what's happening in all 3 locations. So the 1 factory does get taken out for Valthor, sending back some units now to try to defend the last barracks and factory here. The barracks will also fall. The push from Valthor in the middle is looking decent. Here come these helicopters. There's going to be 2 SAMs for blue by the time these 2 red helicopters show up. And Plant Block now has 4 helicopters on the left-hand side. Valthor is building another barracks to try to replenish some of these commandos that have fallen. There's only 2 tanks left for Valthor, who's building 4 more at home. And there's the damage. All the red infantry get cleaned up, but they were able to destroy a barracks and a factory. Nothing else going on the map. Valthor built one of the industries here in the forest. It's still a decent push from blue. Helicopters from red are going to be of enormous help here in this defense. The helicopters proc a little bit to that SAM, so 2v1 against the SAM unit. I think these helicopters will be able to destroy it. Very close, but not quite. And the SAM might actually get this helicopter on the way home. Five interceptors certainly going to be enough for Plant Block to have air superiority here. And let's see if Valthor can do much with these tanks. The infantry have been cleaned up at this point. There's a submarine pen now for Valthor on the right-hand side of the map. Another town and port for Plant Block. 896 income for red, 1068 for blue. And I think that eco advantage comes from how successful these commandos have been capping the northwest. And also all these little industry sites that Valthor has built. Building some more on the bottom right at this point. 4th factory for Plant Block, who nearly has the airport's full of planes at this point. And somehow Valthor's been able to hold on here, building another barracks and another factory in this choke, which is going to make this a very difficult spot for Plant Block to break through. Especially because this is in the mountains. And the tanks tanking a lot of shots. Pardon the pun, if that's a pun. For these artillery pieces. Plant Block will be able to defend this. But it's tough to lose the left-hand side of the map. And these subs are going to be devastating. Valthor also has the foothold on the right-hand side. We'll probably see a barracks somewhere down here at some point. We heard the moo of a cow, so that means that Valthers put down another farm, another industry site somewhere on the map. These artillery pieces are now dug in, which has made it so that Plant Block really can't get through this choke anymore. And good game. Well played to both. Very interesting game. I want to see the graphs here. On the income specifically. And like most line war games, it was close until it wasn't on the eco. Folks, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the cast. If you want to learn more about the game, you can check out the Line War Discord, where you can find matches, chat with folks, ask questions, whatever it is. You can check out Twitch. I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/SodaQuackers. It's the same handle as YouTube. Hope you have a wonderful night, day, evening, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it is, wherever you are. We will see you later. Peace.